So here we are today in my backyard, and today in my backyard is in the Swansea Town Hall. And my guest is Francis Faulkner. Now, Francis, I hear you you know a lot about the cemeteries in Swansea.
I try.
Now, why do you know a lot about the cemeteries?
Part of my job is maintaining the cemeteries and keeping track of all the burials that we do in the cemeteries, you know, where everybody's located and, you know.
Yep. And they're going to stay there, right?
Hopefully.
So we have how many cemeteries in Swansea?
There are 5.
Okay, and where are those located and what are their names?
There are 2 in the center of town, which is, one is Mount Ceasar Cemetery, which is the older cemetery. And then we also have Mountain View Cemetery, which is approximately a mile down the street from the town hall.
Yeah.
Then we have Oak Hill Cemetery in West Swansea. And we have Homestead Cemetery in West Swansea. And then we have a small cemetery in Westport Village. Most of the people that get buried there were born and raised in Westport.
Right, because Westport is part of Swansea?
Yes, it is.
Right, so Swansea is a huge area.
Yes.
What is it, like 45 square
I don't know the exact
miles
number,
or something? I think that's what, yeah, it's pretty large.
It's the largest, second largest community in Cheshire County.
Yeah, and I mean, nobody would ever think of it because you've got North Swansea, East Swansea,
Yes.
West Swansea, Westport,
Swansea Center.
Swansea Center, yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it's quite large.
Yes.
So we've got all these cemeteries, and the focus today on the cemeteries is going to be on the Mount Ceasar Cemetery.
Okay.
Okay. And so as we're driving in, we see a crypt, I guess, a winter crypt?
Yes.
Is that what you call it?
Yes.
And that's that's not used anymore?
That's not used anymore. We do use it for storage because it does stay dry.
Right.
But it was used to store individuals during the winter months, you know, when you couldn't do a burial.
Right, yeah. And I see a lot of the older cemeteries had those for that purpose.
Yes.
Yeah. So as we're driving in, you go up straight and you see a lot of headstones on the left-hand side, but I think what we're going to focus on today is the headstones on the right-hand side.
Okay.
And those are some of the older
Yes.
headstones that
Yes.
that were there in the original cemetery. So can you tell me a little bit about some of the oldest headstones that we're going to find, or some of the families that were there?
Some of the families, you're going to see a lot of stones from the Holbrook families. You're going to see stones from the Whitcomb families. You're also going to see stones from a family named Nathaniel. And when you look back at the Swansea town history, you will see their name mentioned as, you know, being involved with the setting up of Swansea.
Right. And the Sawyers as well,
Yes,
I think you said.
yes.
So on the Nathaniel family, they have a very interesting burial plot.
Yes.
So theirs is right into the earth.
Yes. They, you know, some of the, I think this is the only, the Mount Ceasar Cemetery is the only one that has family tombs. And I'm not positive if it's Nathan or if it's Jonathan, but their tomb only has 3 individuals in it. And the tomb next door to it, which really doesn't look like a tomb because of the flat rock that slopes down, actually has 18 individuals in it.
Wow. Now, is that family that you were talking about earlier with me when we were just talking about the family that died off completely almost?
That was the Sawyer family.
Okay, and is that crypt, or is that somebody else?
No, that's separate from
Okay.
there. It's, you know, maybe 100 feet away. But during the early 1800s, within a span of 2 years, they lost most all of their children.
And what was that? Smallpox?
I can only attribute that it probably was some kind of a disease.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Yep. Wow. So the Sawyers, they were some of the first families here?
Yes.
Okay. And now you were also, I don't know if that was the Sawyer name. All of this, there's so many things to keep track of in these cemeteries, but you said the oldest headstones were for some very young children?
They're not really prominent headstones. They're kind of like, you know, just flat pieces of rock stuck in the ground. And there are writings on them that are difficult to read. But those 2 individuals were a boy 2 years old and his brother 4 years old. And they were buried in 1771, which really makes them British citizens and not Americans, because we weren't in America. You know, we weren't in America yet.
Right. Wow. Wow. You know, just the history. You know, when I think about a cemetery, I don't think about death. I don't look at them as being expired. I look at all of the energy, all of the talents, all of the things that these people did in their lives, and now they have a time to rest.
Yes.
I think that's how I look at
Yes.
it. So, what are some of the other plots? Now the Carpenters,
Carpenters
they have an area there too?
Yes, there are several, carpenter stones, and one of the more prominent ones is George and Lucy Carpenter, which actually gave land to the town to be run as a shelter for the poor.
Yeah.
And that was given to the town in 1931.
Okay, and that's the Carpenter home now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I understand that, like Mount Caesar has some, trails that will go up. You
Yes.
can climb up those, and you go kind of through the cemetery to get to the trail.
Yes.
In some cases, yeah.
Yes.
And now, you may not know this, but I'm sure you know it, Francis. But what is the reason that it's called Mount Caesar?
That I do not know, to be honest with you.
Okay, I had to do some research for this. So what I'll tell you is, Mount Caesar is named after a slave.
Yes, you're right.
Right.
It is.
Yes. And I would have always thought that it
Yes.
was, Julius
Yes.
Caesar, but it was named after a slave, which I find really interesting.
Yes.
I'd like to do more research on that, because how many slaves did we have in this area? How many
Not
black
many.
people did we have? I
Yeah.
mean, we don't have that many now.
Right.
So,
Right.
it's really interesting to see that that a mountain, a pretty
Yes.
big mountain,
Yes.
was named after a
Yeah.
slave. So you also said that the town used to be closer to the Carpenter home
Yes.
area.
The original town was laid out, if you go up Seminole Lane, that led to where the original lots for the town were laid out.
Yep.
And Mount Caesar Cemetery was part of the original layout of the town, in that land was set aside for a cemetery.
Yep.
And you can read that in the town history.
Wow, wow. So the town must have moved down. It must have been like a fort, I would think. I think that
It
from
could
what
have
I
been,
understand, yeah.
yes. The town was originally settled in 1733, and then, but due to Indian issues,
Right,
everybody moved away,
Right.
and then came back.
right, right.
No.
And then from what I understand, I think this is right, but there were about 62 families that took plots and
Yes.
decided to set up homesteads. So I can imagine that this area had huge farms.
Yes.
All along Route 32 and Matthews Road, and I mean, almost really everywhere.
Yes.
You see all these old farmhouses. You see the schools. You see, municipal buildings. The little town is not. I know it's not little, but the Swansea Center, it's beautiful, but it's very tiny. You've
Yes.
got a Grange building. You've got a town hall. You've got a Mount Caesar library, which was a seminary at
Yes.
one time.
Yes.
Yep. So, they've done a lot of planning to, get to where we are. But again, I want to talk about history.
Okay.
So, what are some of the things that you see in Mount Caesar Cemetery that you find pretty interesting?
When that cemetery started, and it's true of all older cemeteries, people that were, buried in the late 1700s, early 1800s, had a totally different outlook on death than we do. And when you look at a lot of the older monuments, you'll see things such as skulls, or a skull with a pair of wings, or trees of life, like a willow tree. And you don't see that today on the modern stones,
Right.
because our outlook on death was not the same as theirs.
Right. I think some of them are just so beautiful. And I can understand. I don't think you can go and do rubbings anymore on stones.
You can
Oh,
if you get permission of the selectman.
Okay. Okay.
And I know that because I used to be a selectman.
Okay, all right. But really, the rubbings, if you did a rubbing on the stone, some of them are just absolutely beautiful.
Yes, they
Yeah.
are.
I mean, like you said, the willows, and I find it interesting to read over the stones, because there are so many different things that than we would have. Now it seems like it's just like the name, the date, whatever. But they left messages.
Yes,
And
they did.
they give you clues about what their family was like, or why the person died, or what was really cool about.
And they also got down to, like today when you do a monument, you were born such and such a date, and you passed away on such and such a date.
Right.
But when you look at the older stones, you were born on such a date, and you died on such a date, and it'll give you the age in years, days, and months
Right.
of that individual.
Right. Yeah. Makes it a little nicer.
Yes.
You don't have to figure out all these numbers. So I see, throughout the cemetery also, I've seen stones where they have names on different sides. Now, when they have names on different sides, does that mean that there are burial plots out in all directions, or is that just like a headstone for most of them, or how does that work usually?
In the older parts of the cemetery, they were kind of random where individuals went, and that's why we don't do burials in the older part of the cemetery, because we're not positive where people
everybody
are.
is, yeah.
But on modern burials, there is a set pattern to laying out the lots.
Yep. And I also see that some people have larger headstones than others.
Yes.
So was that a status?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And so again, what are some of the families that you would see some of the larger headstones for?
The
And
Wickham,
it doesn't have to be just this one here. We can talk about other cemeteries too.
Wickham families, was a prominent family in
Yeah.
town. The Lane family was a prominent name in town. Those are the ones that come to mind.
Right. But there's another one, again, the Carpenters,
Yes.
that they have a pretty
Yes.
large one there as well. Now, I just love walking in cemeteries. I know this probably sounds really strange, but I love looking at all of these things. Now So I was walking along, and I went by a couple of graves, and what do I find but a container of sand?
You have to find most anything besides somebody's grave.
Yeah, yeah. This grave that we're looking at here, this Mason grave, they have, it looks like sea sand. They have shells.
Yes.
They have a hard lemonade that somebody's already drank, but they got a Blarney Stone. This person. Okay, so Murphy, Mason, McGowan must have been Irish.
Yes.
So these stones all tell us a lot about who is in this cemetery.
Yes.
Yeah. So what are some of the other things that you've found in some of these graves?
This particular grave that we're looking at right now, what we have done is where we're standing used to be a road, and we have closed off 2 of the roads, and we've laid them back out for additional burial lots, because otherwise the cemetery would be closed to burials.
Right.
So the Mason family purchased a lot last year, 2012, and this year, 2013, a family by the name of Wells also purchased a lot. And because, of my connection to Swansea, I knew where the Wells lived, and the house that the Wells lived in is currently the same house that the Masons live in. And when Wells bought their lot, I made no mention of, the house until after she made her decision.
So do you think they're talking now?
They could be.
Remember when you did that thing to the kitchen? I wasn't really happy with that, and the gardens have been let go a little bit, but
Yes.
it's okay. And I like that tree that you
So
put in.
it's just very interesting that they ended up side by side
Isn't
when
it?
they actually lived in the same house.
Right? Isn't that funny?
At 2 different times.
Yeah, yeah. Small town.
Yes.
Sort of.
Very small town.
Yeah, yeah. So we're looking out here, Francis, and I see all kinds of headstones. I see modern headstones. I see the older ones. What was the stuff? Was it slate that they used, or?
A lot of the stones that you see in this part of the cemetery are marble.
Okay.
And the reason that they're black is because of the acid rain.
Oh,
that
okay.
we get.
So they started out white, or
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
I never knew that. Yeah, because I see a lot of them get the lichen and things on them.
We have cleaned up, some of them. We're starting to do a cleaning process to get them back to their original color, but it's going to take us several years to get there.
Yeah. How many plots do you have that are filled, or how many people are in the cemeteries that we have here in Swansea?
This cemetery has close to 2,000 people.
Right, and this is the Mount Ceasar Cemetery.
Yes.
Yeah. So 2,000 people just in here.
Yes.
Yep. And how many people do you have usually per year that do pass away in the area, approximately?
Our typical burials range anywhere from 45 to 55 per year.
Yeah.
And what I have seen in the last year is that cremations were a couple more than full burials. It always used to be that there were more full burials than cremations.
Well, I think people have changed their point of view towards cremation now.
Yes.
And maybe you're looking at space-wise, and like if somebody buys a plot, what do they have to? They can only have so many people in it.
Yes.
Whether it's cremation or
If they're
burial, or
most lots are sold as full body burials, and a full body burial lot is 4 feet by 10 feet.
Yep. Yep. So with the cremation, you can fit a few more people
Yes.
in. Right.
Yes.
Right. So, okay. So, as I'm looking along here, we'll touch this a little bit later in the show, but I do see some of the headstones as being larger. They must be the family plots.
Yes.
Okay. And this one over here is just beautiful. I don't know what the name is on that, but is it
Holbrook.
Holbrook? Yeah.
And he
So
was actually a doctor.
Uh-huh.
He was born in New York.
Yeah.
But moved up here.
Yeah.
And whether he was a practicing doctor here, I don't know. But I know if you read his stone, it does say that he was a physician.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. Wow. And then we have another larger one here that looks even older.
Yes.
This one right behind us.
If we went around to the front of it, we could get a name. But
yeah. Yeah. But I mean, there's a lot of pretty large stones. Now, was there somebody that would build these stones, or did the families make them, or what did they do?
What generally happened is these stones may have been made, like in a monument factory.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go the upper part of the cemetery, which is the older part, you'll find stones that have been hand carved.
Mm-hmm.
And what they used to do is the stone cutter would come around and he'd work in this cemetery for 6 months, and
mm-hmm.
then he'd move on to another cemetery,
mm-hmm.
and you'll actually see misspellings
Right.
on some of the stones.
What can you do? I mean, he tried, but
Yes.
it happens. Yeah. So now most of the stones are made of marble. There's a few here. These look like pretty old ones too here.
Yes.
Now, so when the cemetery started, it started up here and it kind of came down this way, it looks
Yes.
like? Okay.
Yes.
All right. And now how did they decide, again, it must have been money. It must have been how much they could afford,
Mm-hmm.
to have as a plot. Some people just have these little granite pieces in the ground.
What that does is that outlines the perimeter of the lot.
Oh, I see.
So that benefits me
Mm-hmm.
when I come to do, to locate somebody's
Right.
burial plot.
Right.
I can use those cornerstones as a
Yep.
reference.
Yep. Wow. Wow. Okay. So now I have relatives that are in the back of the cemetery. They're the Lanes.
Okay.
And from what I understand, they had bucket mills and
Yes.
different things like that. And that was in the mid-1800s. I mean, I would have loved to have been here in the mid-1800s. It's such an interesting time where there were people moving into the areas. There was industry. There was just a lot of activity, building up this area. What can you tell me about the Lanes and that area up there?
The Lanes, like you said, they were a prominent family in town. Primarily, most of their industry was located in East Swansea.
Right.
There wasn't a lot here. Swansea Center was primarily a farming community.
Right.
More than it was, an industrial community.
Right. Yeah.
And because there's no cemetery really per se in East Swansea, they were all put here.
Right. Right. Yeah. So interesting. So interesting. So let's see. Anybody else that you can think of that's lying here in back of us that you'd like to focus on? Because it looks like it's going to rain, so we're probably going to head inside in just a bit. But anybody else that you want to focus on, or anything that you'd like to tell us here while we're out here?
I think, while we're talking about the Mason stone, you can see the style of this stone, even though it was purchased, 2012. It's in keeping what was put in the cemetery in the early 1900s.
Right.
So
right.
it fits very well.
Yeah. Lots of straight lines, and it looks like they're very they're strong. I think maybe they're just trying to tell you who they are.
Yep.
Yeah. So, let's head inside because it does look like we're going to get a little bit of rain, and then we can talk about this a little bit more.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. These things. Now let's go to some of the other cemeteries.
Okay.
Now, the Homestead
Yes.
Cemetery. Now, is that named that because of the old Homestead play, or is
No,
it because of Homestead Avenue?
I think it's because of Homestead Avenue. And that cemetery was, if you go there and look, the oldest stone you're probably going to find is in the early 1800s. And there are some that go into the 1900s. Currently, the only thing that we allow in that cemetery are cremation burials. We don't do any...
Because it looks pretty full.
Yes.
Yeah.
We don't do any full body burials in that cemetery.
Yeah.
One of the prominent names in the Homestead Cemetery is the Thompson family.
Right. And Denman Thompson from the old Homestead. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, he had a house right across the street from it almost.
Yes.
Yeah.
He did.
So, and that stone, if you're looking at it, is over to the right-hand side.
Yes.
And does he have a lot of family there too? Because it looks like a pretty big stone with lots of names on it.
Yes, there are several family members there.
Yep, okay. And then just up the road, towards the recycling center, there's another cemetery there. That one is called the
Oak Hill Cemetery.
Okay. And what is special about the Oak Hill Cemetery?
Has a lot of oak trees.
Yeah? Is that why it was named that?
I think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
And, it takes us considerable time in the fall because, all the leaves.
Right.
But again, that cemetery was started in the early 1800s as well. And as you get further back in the cemetery, it comes into modern times.
And are those plots still available?
Yes,
Okay.
at the far end of the cemetery.
Okay, yeah. And I think there's two more. The one that's down on Route 32, that's the newest one.
Yes, which is Mountain View Cemetery.
Okay.
And that's our most active cemetery. And we do have...
Really, most active?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
It is. It really
But
is.
it's the one that you
Well,
have most of the burials
thing
in.
the thing you got to look at is cemeteries are not for the dead, they're
Right.
for the living.
They are, right. Right. You're right. Right. Well, we just stopped down there the other day to see my husband's father, and it was nice to
Yes.
know that he's there and
Yes.
that we can talk with him.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I do have one quick question about the cemeteries. Is it okay to put the plants in the ground, or do they all have to be above
No,
ground?
they can put them in ground.
Okay. How about trees and shrubs and things
We
like
do
that?
allow trees and shrubs, but we don't like anything that's going to get really huge
Right.
because then it gets out of control.
Yeah, and you have to take care of all of these
Yes.
too. Right?
Yes.
So I'm going to talk about the other cemeteries in just a minute as well. But now that we're on this path, how long does it take you to mow all of these cemeteries? And do you have somebody doing it like continuously all summer?
Yes,
Yeah.
we do.
Yeah.
Altogether, not including cemeteries and other grounds, we have to maintain 30 acres of ground.
Wow.
in
And how
town.
many people do you have doing this?
We have 4 people during the summer.
Wow.
So it's pretty much a full-time job,
Yeah,
and especially with the weather the way it's been.
Right.
Keeping up with all
Right.
the grass
You get
growing.
rain. Yeah. You get
Yes.
rain. You get a lot of grass, and then you got to
Yes.
mow again.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And the other cemeteries that we haven't touched.
We haven't
Westport?
touched Westport. Westport is kind of a village cemetery. Most of the people that are there, I grew up in Westport, so I'm familiar with a lot of the names, that are in that cemetery. And again, there's an older part of that cemetery that dates back to the early 1800s that we don't bury in because, again, we don't know where everybody is.
Right. So what are some of the names that you know of from the Westport Cemetery?
You'll see a lot of names like with the Kempton families, the Jocelyn family, the Willards, and I think there's actually a Faulkner down there as well too.
Yeah.
Whether he's related or not,
Right.
I don't know.
You just never know. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And is there one more cemetery that we haven't talked about? I can't.
We haven't. We touched on. No, I think we got them all.
Get them all? Okay. Good.
There is actually one small family cemetery that not a lot of people are aware of, and it's in East Swansea, and it's kind of maybe a quarter mile out in the woods. And the cemetery is smaller than this room,
Right.
but it's just for a family by the name of Applin.
Wow. Wow. So interesting. I mean, just to think about the history that all of these people have. And, you have life, you have death. I mean, you get them both.
Yes.
So it's going to happen one day or the other.
Yes.
So anyway, I'm really happy that we've had a chance to talk about some of these. Is there anything that you can remember that is like a story that you'd like to share with us, or anything that out of your time that you've been in the cemeteries?
There's
You've
one.
never had anybody come up, have you?
No, I
Okay.
have not.
All right.
But there is one stone that you will see up in Mount Ceasar Cemetery that it kind of intrigued me when I first saw it. Is I think the family name is Perry, but on the back side of the stone, and I won't get the quotation exactly right, but it says, "Remember me in the spring when the peepers call. Remember me in the fall when the crickets call," I think it is, "if you remember me at all."
Seriously, I'm going to cry. Oh, that's so nice. But, it's a lasting memory that he's left. And then when
Yes.
everybody else reads it,
Yes.
they're going to think of their family as well.
Yes.
So it's really wonderful.
It is.
Fritz, I've learned so much today. I'm really happy that
Thank
we've got
you.
a chance to talk. Yeah.
Thanks.
Wish the weather was better, but,
Yes.
we'll get out there again some other time, and we'll take another tour of the cemeteries.
Okay.
So today we've been in my backyard with Francis Faulkner. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And If you're interested in more information about In My Backyard, you can email us at inmybackyardch8@gmail.com, and we'll try to get back to you. And we love your input, so, send your emails. All right, we'll see you again in my backyard.